Hey guys, Ryan Earnhardt here from CreativeSoundLab.tv. Well, today we're checking out the dual Reamp box by Attic Audio. It can feed two different amps at once. It's passive, variable output impedance, phase flip on the second output. Man, this thing just has a ton of possibilities. Later on in the video, I want to show you a vocal effect that I created by feeding two different amps simultaneously and then capturing those amps with a stereo microphone. So stick around, this one's going to be a good one. So I first met Luke from Attic Audio on Instagram. He's got a great Instagram account. He's building some other pedals as well. But I love small companies that build stuff with passion. I really like that. And I always want to support the small companies and see what they're up to. We've seen this with M-House Studios, for example, and other small builders. What's also cool is Attic Audio is actually based out of Malta, a very small island in the Mediterranean. So let's get to the test. We have a basic shootout here of the dual reamp versus the other reamps that I have here in the studio. Okay, so it's possible that there might be some gain fluctuations that affect the amount of high end that the amp is producing. I definitely hear a difference when we go to the RMP. It really just sounds lifeless. However, the dual reamp, it stacks up against these others. If I had to make a comparison, I'd say it's closest to the Angry reamp by Signal Art. It has a similar sized transformer in it. It has some color, but in a really nice way. Okay, on to the next test. We have a impedance output test. So if you open the back of the pedal, you can actually change the output impedance. All the way to the right at about 3 o'clock is 25,000 ohms. And then all the way to the left, which is technically 9 o'clock, we have a very low ohm output. So let's shoot it out. Okay, so I think I hear a little bit better of a sound at the higher impedance. It's a little difficult to hear because there's a lot of overtones being added to the amp after all of this. So it's almost kind of getting covered up as far as what the difference may be. But it just seems a little bit more alive to me, a little more maybe sparkly in the top end. So I think I'll maybe settle at about 1 or 2 o'clock, maybe not all the way up, but settle about 2 o'clock for my output impedance. What's cool is that you don't have to decide. I mean, you could set one channel to a lower impedance and the other channel to a higher impedance. And then that way, if you want to just switch and see if there's a difference, you can do it very quickly. Here I had to open up the pedal, which is a disadvantage. I mean, it might be nice if we had like an access hole, similar to what we have on the 1176. We can just feed a very tiny screwdriver right through and change the settings. But I think that having two outputs, it's more than enough. I can experiment with tones just by switching the outputs on the dual reamp. On Guitar Amp today, we have the 414B ULS, controlled by the Dynamount X2R. And this is great because I can basically EQ the sound of the guitar by mic position. And I can control it from my computer in the control room and actually save these presets and go back to them. Very cool, very handy for guitar tone sculpting and seeking out new sounds. Finally is kind of a vocal effect that I created. I was experimenting with maybe reamping the same guitar twice, seeing if there's any kind of cool stereo imaging that I can get. But ultimately, what I found, and kind of a successful experiment, is you actually can send a vocal track, you can apply some reverb, like a plate reverb, you can send it out to the dual reamp, and then that goes to 2 different amps. And it is the same signal. I've applied reverb, but when it's going through 2 different amps, it has a slightly different sound between left and right. And what's really cool is if you have 2 different amps that have a tremolo, well, now these tremolos could be kind of dancing and weaving back and forth in the stereo image. So it's not just about the reactivity of the amp and the speaker, but it's also the timing of that tremolo. So mixed in underneath some vocal, here's how it sounds.
Lost my way, don't know where to go. Oh, I need a friend to show me the road. Lost my mind, I can't stray. Oh, I need something to show me the way. Because I'm standing on the borderline. Oh, I do declare, you know it ain't right.
So I really dig these small companies full of passion and innovation. So I'm curious to see what Luke comes up with next. I know he's working on some other builds, but I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Again, this could be used not just for guitar amps, but different sets of guitar pedals, whole signal chains. Anything that's really unbalanced can be used with this. And in fact, you can change the output impedance so you could trim it down or up depending on the devices that you're going into. Usually you have kind of an output impedance that's lower than the input impedance is about 10 times higher, so you want it to kind of step up. And so if you need to, you can take the output impedance down, turn it down to go into something like a DBX 163X, for example. Okay, so I'd love to know your thoughts. I'll be hanging out in the comments below.